Welcome back, welcome back. On this programme we always like to bring you the best if we possibly can. So let's speak to a man who's indisputably the world's best in his field. Novak Djokovic has had a remarkable year on the men's tennis circuit. He's won Wimbledon, the US Open and the Australian Open, 3 of the 4 Grand Slam titles. He's been #1 in the world almost all of this year, his first time at #1. And in his homeland of Serbia, he's a sporting hero. Other countries too, of course. All this at the tender age of just 24. Well, I caught up with him during the ATP World Tour Finals in London. Novak, you've got a sort of holiday coming up after this week's tournament, haven't you?
Yes, it's the last tournament of the year, and it's been a long season, very successful one, and I'm looking forward to take some time off and reflect on everything I have done this year.
I was talking to Juan Martin del Potro at Wimbledon, and he was saying, he was sort of making a passionate plea that you should, all of you, not have to play quite as many matches. Do you share that?
Yes, I think most of the players would like to have a bit shorter season, a bit more space between the big events, so we can kind of get ready and not risk any big injuries. But tennis ATP as an organization is representing both tournaments and players, and you need to consider both sides, and it's not an easy task to achieve and to solve, and it takes time for changes, but I think the world in general is changing, so I think our sport should be open for that as well.
You said the other day, after this fantastic year that you've had, but you said, my body is aching for recovery. You can feel that now, can you? Yes,
I can. I'm still trying to maintain my fitness level on a very high level because of this tournament. That is the most important tournament in this part of the year. It's the best 8 players in the world are participating here, and I need to be physically and mentally 100% fit in order to perform my best, in order to get a chance to win every match that I play on. And then it's 3 weeks off. I need that more than anything right now. And what is the thing, Novak, about why is it that sometimes actually you are almost invariably on form, but sportsmen, tennis players, and so on, why is a player on better form one day than the next week? I mean, what is it? Is it in the mind? Is it in the back of the legs, or what is it? I think there's many things that are influencing the change of performances. Not every day you can perform your best. That is something that is certain. The other thing we have to consider is that because of the schedule we have to travel from one time zone to the other time zone in 1 week time, and actually get ready in just a couple of days to the time change, to the other climate, to the different surface, to the different tennis balls. There's a lot of things that can affect the performance, so it's definitely not easy.
And you said once the winner is the one who believes most in victory.
I believe so. I felt that on my example. I don't think that my game has changed in a big way from comparing to the game that I had in the last couple of years. But what changed this year is my self-belief on the court, my confidence, and believing that I can win major events against the top players, and maturity as well. And I'm just happy to see myself progressing in such.
So it is mental, do you think, the thing that was the biggest thing that took you into the greatest year of your life?
I believe so, yes.
Mental, yeah. And you've got to have the talent. I remember I was interviewing once Bobby Fischer, the American who became the world chess champion, and someone else was saying the great thing about Bobby is he's got a tremendous will to win, will to win. But then Bobby Fischer said, I don't agree with that. I've played a lot of chess players who've got tremendous will to win, but they were no good. So it's a combination of the talent and the mind.
It's just the right balance in the life. I think you need to be very disciplined in tennis. You have to be very professional. Whatever you do on the court, off the court, has to be dedicated fully to the sport that you're playing. And you have to take care of what you eat, how you travel, how much you practice, and you have to be prepared well. I think it's rather will to prepare than will to win as well, of course. I think that creates that mental toughness, just being ready to perform your best.
And you mentioned food there. I mean, that's a vital thing. Your parents have been in the fast food business, but you have a different sort of diet.
Well, they were not in the fast food business, but they had this restaurant business, and they still have back in Belgrade, and that's something that I've done for more than 20 years. But I have been always trying to eat healthy, and I always thought that I'm eating healthy until I, find out that I am eating healthy, but not the proper food for myself. So I changed to the gluten-free diet, and that helped me a lot to,
to feel better. The gluten-free diet. What were the things you had to give up that was good to give up then?
Well, I didn't give up many things, but I gave up. I don't eat chocolate anymore, and that's a big change for me because in my family they have a lot of sweets, bread, pasta, regular milk. So we have the gluten-free bread and pasta I eat.
Because you see, it's funny, isn't it? Because Arsene Wenger, the manager of Arsenal, and other managers in football, positively feed their players pasta 2 hours before a big match or whatever.
It's carbohydrates. It's something that is necessary for the body to have prior to the competition. I think the carbohydrates are the easiest to digest, but still give you enough nutrition.
So what's been the best moment of this magic year? The most exhilarating moment? Wimbledon
trophy, yes. Wimbledon trophy, that was an unforgettable moment, and I got to share that with my close ones.
Yeah. So, and your ambition for the future? I mean, to do as well again, or all four this year, this coming year?
Well, in the coming year, it's going to be really difficult to repeat what I've done this year. But I am confident that I can play well, that I can get far in a Grand Slams if I prepare myself well, and if I still have this great desire on the court. And I'm sure I'll do well.
I can't see that desire ebbing away at all.
Yes.
Well, congratulations on this year. Good luck for next year.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Good
Great
talking to you.
Libya's interim Prime Minister, Abdurrahim al-Kaib, this week formed a 24-member government in the same week that Chief Prosecutor Luis Ocampo, world Chief Prosecutor in a way, agreed that Saif al-Gaddafi can be tried in Libya with the cooperation of the International Criminal Court. In forming a government, the National Transitional Council faces the daunting task of trying to reconcile regional differences whose rivalries threaten to upset the country's fragile stability. After Colonel Gaddafi's 42-year rule, the Libyan government must now work towards fair elections next year, ensure security and stability, all the while trying to rebuild that broken economy. Well, joining me now to discuss the challenges ahead is a former advisor to the NTC, a man who was instrumental in lobbying the US for NATO intervention to remove Gaddafi from power. An expert on US-Libya relations, he is Omar Turbi, who was with us last time when you were in Benghazi back in March. And how has it changed for you, the atmosphere there now in Libya? You were there, what, 6 weeks ago?
It's hard to imagine and hard to believe that in these segments of time we've seen and touched on tremendous changes. Now we're on to a new phase in Libya, a new interim government headed by Dr. Abdurrahim al-Kaib, whom I have the highest regard for. I feel very confident that he will lead a good government.
Do you think it's tough? The list we just read out of the things are quite a tough challenge for him. Is he up to it? Has he experience to do it?
He has not been a prime minister or held any government positions, but so far in the past 2.5, 3 weeks that he has been a prime minister, he's demonstrated not only by his presence that Libya can be stable. There's been a good sense of stability, not only from him as a person, but the choice of cabinet members here is like a list of who's who, some of the brightest Libyan scholars and business people, and I'm very optimistic that that will lead the country into hopefully democratic changes.
And there's no Islamist element in this current government of the names that have been announced and so on. Is that deliberate?
Well, Libya is a country that is Islamic country, derives its values from Islam,
Yeah.
and it's a Sunni country. And the element of Islam is not going to be absent from any government going forward. As a matter of fact, this government does have a number of people that have Islamist leanings, but very good and positive. They have a great outlook on the world as far as relationships with the West, dealing with the outside world, integrating Libya's with the world economy.
So is it possible that the new government could become an Islamist government?
No. It depends on what your definition of Islamist government is.
Yeah.
So you have members of the government that are to some extent religious, but they're not going to be conducting themselves in Sharia law as some people may suggest.
What about the trial of Gaddafi's son? Do you think that the system in Libya will be geared up to be able to cope with that? The thought now is, of course, that it's going to be Libyan trial with the International Criminal Court right there alongside, isn't it? Will that work, do you think?
I don't know. It's very hard to say. Some of the mistakes I've seen so far is letting him speak in public. You know, what you do is to protect your lawsuit or your legal case against a criminal is to immediately provide a lawyer by their side and make sure that everything they say is counted in the court of law. So that hasn't happened, and a little bit of a concern. So we hope that the ICC would guide them through these processes and that the man would receive a fair trial. And I believe that the Libyan people would be able to conduct a trial. The question is, what lawyer will he have representing him? Would it be a Libyan lawyer? Would it be a foreign lawyer? All these questions remain.
What's your impression of him? Did you ever meet Saif?
One time ever. I talked to him on the phone a couple of times, and the first time that I met him was to deliver a message to him that dealing with large U.S. companies could be a violation of FCPA rules, and he never liked me ever since. FCPA rules is corruption, so he didn't like that.
He didn't like that?
No, he didn't like that.
And what about in terms of the other problems that are unemployment? 1 million youth unemployed. What on earth can a new government do about that?
Very important. I happen to have a good relationships with the new labor minister, Mr. Mustafa Rajbani, who I'd like to propose and suggest many means and many ideas of how to reduce unemployment as far as outside training and so forth. It's going to be a tough challenge. But the new interim government must immediately, within the next few days, within the next few weeks, come forward to the Libyan public and say, folks, it's not going to take 8 months. It's going to take longer than that. It's totally unrealistic to expect the interim government to achieve democratic processes for election and constitution within this time frame. It's very short. From our experiences worldwide, from countries that have emerged from dictatorships to a democracy, it takes a minimum of 24 months to do that. That's number one.
And what about at the same time you mentioned the word corruption? Can a new government sweep the government clean of corruption, or will corruption forever be there?
You know, I think the signs are great that we will not have the level of corruption we had before. The slate of cabinet members that I see that the council has picked and Mr. Al-Kib picked are very clean people, very honorable, and I think, as you would know, that it's very important for Libya to get those sanctions off at the UN. There are sanctions that are still imposed on Libya to conduct itself in a right manner, get its assets from around the world. And some of the things that I highly recommend is integrating Libya into the world global markets by improving its credit rating. That is so essential and so important. And I do believe that the new interim government can do that in a very short term, perhaps within 90 days, 6 months, and that would be great.
Omar, thank you very much indeed. Good to have you with us, and hope that the road ahead is not stormy, but
I have a small present for you here. This is the pin for the Libyan flag. I hope someday I might wear this here.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
I shall cherish that. Thank you.
Very much.
Another week, another crisis in the Eurozone. Last Sunday saw a landslide victory by Mariano Rajoy's People's Party in Spain, but this has done nothing to stop the debt crisis and calm the frenzied markets. This soap opera continues, with a dismal sale of German bonds, the downgrade of Portugal's credit rating to junk, and the increasing likelihood that France will lose its AAA credit rating. Andrew Balls, head of European Portfolio Management at PIMCO, joins me now here in the studio to explain what we can expect for the next episode. Not Downton Abbey, but similarly heartrending. What is the next key feature? Is the next target of what's going on the banks?
I say there are three things. I think the first one you mentioned is the banks. We need to watch the banks very closely to see if we see increasing deposit outflows from some of the weaker European countries, some of the weaker banking systems. Also the impact of the sovereign crisis on the banks in Germany, in the core of Europe. So firstly, the banks, as you say. Secondly, we have had many summits which were meant to bring an end to this crisis. There's another one coming up in early December. So looking there to see what the governments are prepared to do in terms of moving towards greater fiscal union. Also looking to see what the European Central Bank will do to support it. However, early December, that feels quite a long way off when you have a crisis as difficult as the one that the Europeans are experiencing. So the banks in the short term is something very much to watch.
And to watch carefully if you've got money in them, or just to watch?
So I think if you have money in a European bank, if you are in Greece or in one of the other very troubled countries, there may be the extent to which you worry about the strength of the banks and the ability of governments to support them. Normally, we expect a government to stand behind its banking system in a case of great instability. More broadly, for us as investors, for anyone as an investor, I think looking at the banking system as the thermometer, the gauge of the extent of this crisis and quite how virulent it's getting is the second important feature for the banks.
And virulent it's getting much more virulent, is it?
It has. You started off in Greece, you spread to problems in smaller European countries. It goes to Italy and Spain. This is very significant. Italy, the third largest bond market in the world. More recently, contagion to France, the French banking system, even pressure in Germany and the German banks themselves. So this is something which has continued to strengthen. The lesson of past financial crises, if you can't stop it, it spreads. If you have a row of houses and one is on fire, if you can't stop it, it's going to spread even to the better houses at the end of the street.
So does that mean we should be considering the end of the Eurozone as a possibility, not a probability, but possibility?
I think it is. I think it is a possibility, a real possibility. If you went back 1 and 2 years ago, somebody may have laughed at the suggestion. Now, I think it's something we have to take very seriously. Firstly, in the case of a smaller country leaving the Eurozone, maybe Greece, which is significant, but much more significant is, I think, the relationship between Germany, France and Italy and Spain as the four largest, the leading members of the Eurozone. I think that there's great uncertainty there, and the kind of market action you have been seeing and the kind of pressure you see on France or on the European agencies, the European institutions that issue debt, I think is a clear signal that investors, probably not the probability, but the possibility of implosion of the Eurozone is something that we have to take seriously. Seriously
Seriously indeed. And so that at the moment What advice do you have for people who have their money in banks inside the Eurozone?
I think that's quite a difficult question. Clearly, well, two things. The first thing is you would want to have a clear view on the strength of the bank, the strength of the government support for the banks. But stepping back from the banks and just looking at Europe in general, for investors, for PIMCO's clients, for the people who we manage money for, pension funds, and so on, we would look to go global in terms of your exposures. If you don't need to have your money concentrated in the Eurozone, go global. Look for stronger balance sheets outside of the Eurozone. Be very cautious in terms of your exposures to European debt, European banks, and watch this from the sidelines. I very much hope that over the coming days, weeks, months, that the Europeans will be able to stabilise the situation. I think for investors it's prudent to be very cautious in terms of your European exposures, look for better global alternatives.
Is it really possible that France is in line for a demotion, as it were, as well? Sadly, I think France has already been demoted. When you have a crisis like this, you have contamination up the system, from the weakest to the strongest. And you get to the point, looking at recent market action, where France is seen as having real credit risk compared with Germany. I think a large part of this is uncertainty over the role of the European Central Bank. If you look at the UK, look at the US, you have clear support from the central bank. None of these cross-border issues, none of these games of chicken between monetary and fiscal authorities. In the European case, even in the case of France, it's not clear the extent of the support for from the European Central Bank. And what about France and Germany? I mean, is Angela Merkel clearly the doyen and the queen of Europe? I mean, is Mr. Sarkozy, clearly behind her in power and in their ability to make things happen? Would you say that she's now out front by a mile?
I would say that, and it is a function of the strongest balance sheet. In a crisis, the flight to safety is to the strongest balance sheet. Part of the reason why France has come under significant pressure in the last few months is concerns about the support it may have to give cross-border, its ability to do that, and maintain its AAA rating, as you said in the introduction. During a crisis like this, the logic is the strongest balance sheet is calling the shots, and that is Germany. You have a clear difference of view between Germany and France on how to proceed, and I would say that German view is absolutely prevailing.
That's very clear. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. We've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much indeed. And there you are, the roundup of what's in store for the world as far as finances are concerned. That's all for this week. My thanks, of course, to all of my guests. Do join me again in 7 days' time for a rather special edition of Frost Over the World, because we're joined by that great comedian and a great actor, a great film actor as well. Robin Williams will be here with us in this spot next weekend.